Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Harlequin here, and welcome to my first look at Dawn of War 2 Retribution Beta. Now, some of you may know me from my Company of Heroes online commentaries. That YouTube channel is Harlequin Coho. But for those of you who don't, hi, nice to meet you, that sort of thing. And so I figured I'd just give a quick overview of Harlequin Cast's channel and what kind of stuff you can expect to find here. For the most part, I'm going to be covering games like StarCraft 2 and Dawn of War and Company of Heroes, and just my favorite games, my favorite commentaries. Keep them all in one place to keep it a little bit more simple there. So since this game is coming out of beta and it's getting relatively popular, I figure we'll start these casts off kind of low level and just you know, taking a look at the heroes and the various units and armies and how multiplayer works, stuff like that, kind of at a basic level, and then kind of ramp it up to more advanced strategies and tactics as interest goes up. But for the first couple of replays, if you're new to Dawn of War, this should be good for you because I'm going to start off with no assumptions about what you guys know about this game. So for those of you who don't know my casting style, I'm a pretty laid-back guy. I've got a pretty good sense of humor. I really enjoy these games and try to get really into them. I hate bad manner. I don't like elitism of players who are really good or anything like that. So, you know, I try to keep a nice, good, clean game out there. I honestly believe that all replays are good as long as you have an eye for figuring out what's to be learned from them and what to do and what not to do and that sort of thing. And hopefully, at the end of all this, we'll all be better players anyway. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and kick this off and take a look at our first replay here today. So the first map we're going to take a look at here is going to be Quest's Heresy, which is a 1 versus 1 map. This kind of is a deserty, kind of refinery looking place. Honestly, it reminds me of something out of the movie Dune, you know, kind of a spice mine kind of place. But anyhow, we'll take a look around this map right now and just kind of get an idea for the flow of it and that sort of thing. So the first thing you want to notice is where the victory points are. Now, if you're familiar with Relic games, typically you don't win by destroying all of your opponent's units. You win through victory points. And as you can see at the top of the screen, each player begins with 500 victory points, and we've got 3 of these points scattered throughout the map, 2 on the left and 1 on the right. Whenever you control a majority of victory points, your opponent kind of bleeds out their victory points, and when they get to 0, they lose. The other points to make note of here, we've got requisition points, which are indicated by these little triangles, and then we've got power nodes here, which are indicated by these little bolts of electricity. Basically, each one of those gives you a different type of resource, requisition and power, which you use to buy your units. So your economy in this game is largely determined by the amount of these points that you control at any given time, and most of the early game is spent kind of fighting over who owns what. So let's go ahead and get this replay started and take a look at the players. On the southern side here, we've got Texaneous, who's going to be playing as Orc, and he has got the Orc War Boss as his commander. And on the northern side, we have Choko, who's playing as the Eldar, and you can see already his Warp Spider Exarch is on the other side of the map right now. So Warp Spider Exarch is a real sneaky little hero. You can see here he has basically 2 guns on his back and a bunch of blades, but he can blink around. Very fast hero and can kind of move all over the map. Meanwhile, his starting squad is just this Guardian squad, and he went ahead and built Howling Banshees first. So taking a look around here and looking at Texaneous' Orc, you can see he's got his Slugga Boys, which are his first set of orcs out there. They're kind of all-purpose, kind of basic units out there with some melee weapons. And then he went and bought his Shooda Boys, who are just kind of the all-purpose ranged units. So little early units going on there, but you can see here that it looks like for the most part the Warp Spider Exarch was able to cap the first victory point, and now you got a little bit of light fighting going on here. It looks like the Guardian squad found themselves kind of you know, precariously balanced out here in the middle of all of these Shooda Boys and the War Boss, and just went ahead and had a kind of a tactical retreat there. Meanwhile, the Warp Spider Exarch, we get to see him all of his glory bouncing around. Look at that, he's warping back and forth. Green cover, you can you have a directional cover in this game, so when you're behind you know, heavy pieces of scenery, but it doesn't matter this time because the Orc War Boss is huge and he basically has heavy crush. He can just walk by stomping on cover and that sort of thing, but it doesn't matter because the Warp Spider Exarch is just blinking all around, keeping his distance. A very sort of control-oriented hero. So whereas the Orcs tend to be very brute force oriented. Meanwhile, we do have the Howling Banshees coming in from behind, but it doesn't matter. They're taking a whole lot of damage. Oh, we have a nice little stomping special attack going on there, and you can see this little sync kill going off right now as that poor Howling Banshee is just discarded by the Orc War Boss. So the Orc War Boss now just kind of charging on in. You can see him using that big chainsaw axe right there and a heavy bolter, just kind of firing away right now. The Slugga Boys are now kind of damaging this power plant here. So what happens is as you capture power, you have to upgrade the power station, and then you can build these little power generators. And players can take control of the other player's power, but typically trying to get an early game advantage by destroying your opponent's power is ideal. And as you can see right now, Texaneous is certainly doing that right now. He's already turned off this power node, basically forcing Choko to have to spend spend more requisition to upgrade it again to get it turned back on. And meanwhile, his units are just kind of spread out across the map here. So you can see he still just has 2 Shooter Boys, a single Slugga Boy squad. Meanwhile, we have the Howling Banshees, the regular Guardians, and new to the field, we have some Rangers out on the field. So we'll keep an eye on them later as soon as they get into some more combat here. Looks like the Guardians are just kind of bumping into this war boss here, and I gotta zoom way in here. I love the way the models in this game look. They are so detailed. You know, when I was a kid, I used to paint these miniatures, and I just loved doing that sort of thing. So I played a lot of the tabletop game, and it's really fun to see these guys just animated for me here. So you can see, looks like this war boss here just took a single shot from the Rangers who are on that side right there. Rangers are basically a sniper, except for unlike Company of Heroes, snipers don't always kill a model. Instead, they just do a lot of damage when they fire. So you can see taking some shots here. The war boss is trying to actually capture this power node. He decapped it previously, and it looked like he was taking a little bit too much damage there for comfort. Meanwhile, the Howling Banshee is just kind of charging on in there, but it looks like he's gone ahead and retreated. You can see that huge Orc war boss just kind of rips through terrain whenever he walks past it. Lots of fully destructible terrain in this game. Kind of fun to watch. So meanwhile, everything was tied to 1 victory point to 1 victory point, but you can see with all that commotion going on, the Slugga Boys were able to sneak over here on the right-hand side of the map and start capturing these victory points. So soon it's going to be, well, right now it's 1-0, but soon it'll be 2-2. It's worth noting, by the way, there's a current bug in the game where sometimes the victory points do not display correctly. Like at the top of the screen right now, it seems like it's completely reversed. The blue player is Choko. He, of course, has 1 and 1. But it was reversed right there, but now it's back to normal. Yeah, see, it says 2 for him and 1 for the other guy, so just note that and don't be confused by that. But meanwhile, it is still 2 victory points to the Orc player on the south and 1 victory point for the Eldar player up north here. Meanwhile, Warp Spider Exarch kind of getting back into the fray of things here, and just kind of laying down some suppressive fire right now. Oh, look at that, just ripping apart that one little Shooter Boy right there. You can see, this is kind of a weird thing, by the way. So he is a Warp Spider, which basically, if you want a little bit of Warhammer 40,000 lore here, he does have these Death Spinners on his back. And basically the way those work is they fire out long cables of monofilament wire, basically, that just kind of rip and shred people apart. It's not really quite the same as bullets, but it's pretty cool. Anyhow, a little bit of just kind of, you know, playing footsie, going back and forth here. But as you can see, the map is more or less divided top and bottom, with nobody really gaining control of this power node on the left yet, nobody really gaining control of the center, and just kind of some random points back and forth here. So, meanwhile, you can see that it looks like these Rangers here were able to pick off a single Shooter Boy and this last remaining squad member heading home. It's very important in this game, much like it was in Company of Heroes, really never to lose squads. Unlike games like StarCraft, where you can just take massive casualties and rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, these type of games always reward you for preserving your squads and reinforcing them as they get back home. You actually buy new models for the squad, which ends up being a lot cheaper. Meanwhile, the Slugga Boys here, it looks like they're being upgraded to have a Knob Leader. The Knob Leaders are, of course, the Noble Orcs, and they basically act as a commander, giving them increased abilities and that sort of thing. But you can see that the Slugga Boys now are just kind of chasing down this retreating Guardian squad here. Guardian squad just kind of scampering away there. It's worth noting that similar to Company of Heroes, when you retreat, you have a little bit more armor, and you can see that sniper right there picking off one of the weaker models. Similar to Company of Heroes, you do take less damage as you retreat. However, you take increased damage from melee and from grenades and explosions and things like that. And here we have the first piece of goofy Orc technology out on the field right now. This is the Orc War Truck, and Orcs just have some really comical looking technology, and I really enjoy the character that adds to the game. But so this is basically a transport unit. You can see it's got a machine gunner in it, and it can house a squad. So this is a very mobile way to deploy a lot of Orc units across the field. Howling Banshees, by the way, were down here having a little bit of a firefight with these double Shooter Boys. Shooter Boys, by the way, upgraded with big shooters, which basically give them more abilities and increase their range damage. So meanwhile, you can see that here comes the Orc War Truck, kind of spitting out its cargo right now, which is a single squad, and now they're just getting right back in. So kind of getting ready to have a fight. Looks like now setting themselves up to cap this point here. The Orc War Boss is now kind of wandering on in, and now it's pretty good map control going right now for the Orc player. It looks like Choko is going to have to do something. And this is the really surprising part of this replay right now. So basically, I had the good fortune, bumped into a lot of good players the other day, and we were all just kind of obsing this game. And you can kind of see the idle chatter. And I'm not going to pay too much attention to the chit-chat here, but we were all just kind of watching and wondering what the heck was going on here. Because you'll notice Choko just kind of stopped building units. He's just kind of sitting here at 3 units right now. And really, he's just kind of, you know, struggling to be annoying and to kind of harass and to cap different parts of the field right now. But he hasn't built any more units units, and he has just been straight up teching. So that was a curious point in the game right now, and you can see this war boss getting a little bit of pressure here, having to kind of scoot on out right now, and he is actually retreating. But meanwhile, we'll take a look around on the other side of the map. You can see that this war truck has driven all the way on over here, dumped its payload out, and they are now capturing this victory point. So, you know, 1 power grid up right now for Choko and 1 power up right now for Texaneous. And by which I mean, you know, they have 1 fully set up one, because you do actually have to buy each one of these reactors when you gain access to this power node. So, meanwhile, it looks like a kind of a concerted assault here on the left by basically all of his units except for the Warp Spider X-Arc, which is more towards the center. And now he's kind of spreading out and around. You can see this is where the kind of strategic element of this game comes in, which is that even though he's outnumbered, there are basically 5 orc units on the field right now, including a weird boy. We'll take a look at him in a sec. Using his smaller units, he just has to make decisions basically that allow him to keep capping points over and over again. So here we can see the Rangers are now moving out on the right-hand side, and I want to see that weird boy. Here he is right now. So once again, for a little bit of orc lore here, orcs actually, even though they're kind of the dumbest race, they have some of the most psychically potent guys. They just don't really know how to use them very well. So here's the weird boy. He's basically hurling bolts of psychic energy. Counts as a beam weapon. And you can see huge knockback right there. The Howling Banshees are screaming right now, which helps to suppress and reduce the damage of their opponents, but they are in fact just running away right now. So that weird boy doing a lot of knockback damage there, kind of entertaining. And meanwhile, this goofy war truck is just kind of spinning around here in the middle, crushing scenery and that sort of thing. So, you know, Choko definitely has his work cut out for him right now. You can see this Warp Spider X-Arc has bought his first piece of equipment, the Improved Targeters, which basically just ups his weapon range and damage. That's a common theme throughout here, is that you have to decide what kind of equipment you want for your heroes over and over again. So taking a look at this war boss right now, I gotta say, I love the way that this artwork looks. You can see he's got his trophy rack on his shoulder right now. He's got a Tyranid skull, Space Marine head, and an Eldar helmet. And basically that just gives him a passive ability that weakens nearby enemy units, you know, causing them to do less damage. And he's also upgraded to have a Power Claw, this gigantic kind of Jaws of Life looking thing on his left hand there. And in general, power weapons like gloves and fists tend to do extra damage to vehicles. And of course the Power Claw is no exception here.